I let the woman I loved marry someone else. Was her happiness worth my loneliness? The worst day of my life wasn't the day I lost her, it was the day I smiled and watched her walk away with him, knowing I was the one who pushed her into his arms. I'm Liam, 34 now, and I let the woman I loved marry someone else, just to ensure she had the life she truly deserved, the one I suddenly couldn't provide. I achieved my goal. She is happy, but every quiet evening is a crushing reminder that her joy cost me my future, my purpose, and my peace. Clara, 34, and I met 10 years ago, and from the first second, we were a perfect, chaotic match. She was fire and passion, all urgent ambition and deep, unwavering moral clarity. I was the grounded anchor, the practical one who ran my family's small, respected architectural salvage business. We were both 24 then, planning a future that was less a timeline and more a shared, dizzying adventure. We talked about backpacking through South America one year and founding an international nonprofit the next. We didn't just love each other, we were building a beautiful, complicated world together. I had the ring picked out. The proposal was planned for the seaside retreat we had saved for. We were weeks away from everything changing for the better, or so I thought. Clara's professional path was a soaring trajectory. She was an aspiring international human rights lawyer, her dedication almost frightening in its intensity. Her work demanded global movement, zero instability, and an impeccable, unblemished public record. She needed a partner who was solid, predictable, and entirely free of baggage. My life was none of those things. The bottom fell out in the space of a single, devastating quarter. My father, who had founded the business 40 years prior, had signed a silent, decades-old loan agreement that relied on collateral we no longer owned. When the economy took its dip, the liability surfaced, not as a normal debt, but as a catastrophic legal obligation. The old firm wasn't just broke, it was criminally liable for misrepresenting assets. I, as the successor and sole director, was on the hook. The lawyer laid it out coldly. I was facing absolute financial ruin, a massive, lifelong repayment schedule, and, crucially, a cloud of public legal scrutiny that would take years to resolve. The only way to avoid prosecution and a complete loss of everything was to take on a crushing, total financial obligation and disappear into a specialized, high-paying, remote industry until the debt was serviced. The work would be intense, anonymous, and require me to be geographically isolated, moving every few months to countries where my legal entanglement wouldn't follow. I would be a ghost, working solely to make the problem go away. The timeline was a minimum of 7 years of this exile. I stared at the financial and legal documents, the thick packet of ruin that sat on my desk, and then I looked at the picture of Clara and me laughing on a summer beach trip. She was due to interview for her dream position with the UN legal team in Geneva in 2 months. That job, that life, demanded everything she was. If I stayed, I would have dragged her into my storm. She would have sacrificed her Geneva offer, put her career on hold, and used her legal training to fight a pointless, losing battle to save me. I would have been a chain around her neck, forcing her vibrant, globe-trotting spirit into the confinement of legal struggle and financial dread. Her light would have dimmed, forced to care for my shadow. I knew, with a devastating certainty, that she would have done it, too. Her love was that fierce. And watching her sacrifice her dreams for my failure would have destroyed me more completely than prison ever could. The ultimate act of love wasn't holding on to her, it was making sure I was no longer a factor in her future. I realized I had to let go, not just physically, but emotionally. I had to become the reason she walked away. What would you do? Choose the comfort of her love and accept the mutual ruin of both your careers, or commit a necessary betrayal to save her potential, knowing it would condemn you to loneliness? The choice felt less like a choice and more like a required amputation. The separation was agonizingly systematic. I couldn't tell her the truth. The information about my legal trouble was too dangerous and could compromise her future legal work. She had to believe I was the failure, the immature man who wasn't worthy of her incredible love. I started small. I became cold, unreliable. I stopped planning our future. When she talked about Geneva, I'd talk about a vague, self-sabotaging plan to re-evaluate my life by moving to a small, isolated town to find myself. The contrast was deliberate, her ambition versus my sudden, invented driftlessness. I stopped making an effort with her friends and, worst of all, her parents, who adored me. I manufactured arguments out of thin air, using her genuine concerns about my well-being as ammunition to attack her commitment. I watched the light in her eyes, the light that once burned only for me, begin to flicker, replaced by confusion, frustration, and, finally, hurt. The pivot point came 6 months in. I knew the breakup needed a catalyst, a simple, undeniable fact that proved I was fundamentally broken. I orchestrated a massive, public blow-up at her colleague's engagement party. I drank too much, behaved disgracefully, and when she confronted me later, I ended it with surgical precision. I told her I couldn't handle her success, that I needed someone simpler, less complicated, and that I was tired of being the anchor holding back her magnificent ascent. I was cruel, cold, and utterly convincing in my self-serving villainy. The look on her face, the pain, the confusion, the sudden, sharp disgust, was the price of her freedom. I had successfully replaced love with revulsion. She left, devastated, but she left with her integrity intact, believing I was the failure and the fault was mine alone. The wound I inflicted was raw, but I knew Clara wouldn't wallow. She was too strong for that. She needed an anchor, stability, and someone who would complement the demanding, structured life she was about to step into. I needed to ensure that anchor arrived quickly, before I weakened and confessed. That's where James, 35, came in. James was a lawyer at Clara's firm, solid, predictable, impeccably dressed, and possessed of a quiet, unwavering calm. He was everything I wasn't, especially now that I was a fugitive from my own life. James had always admired Clara from a distance, and I had quietly, subtly, spent months planting seeds of friendship between them, pushing her into his professional orbit before my scheduled self-destruction. I watched from the cold distance of my exile as James stepped into the void I created. He offered her stability, routine, and a complication-free future. He never asked her to slow down or change her trajectory, he simply integrated himself into it. He was the safe harbor she needed, and I was the storm she was finally escaping. When I saw the first picture of them together, a simple, quiet dinner, I felt a physical ache, but also a profound, agonizing sense of relief. The plan was working, she was safe, and she was moving on. Her smile, which had been strained with worry for me, was back, easy, genuine, and entirely for him. 2 years after I pushed her away, the engagement announcement arrived. It was simple, elegant, and published in the legal journals, exactly the kind of official announcement that befitted her trajectory. The wedding was planned for a beautiful, historical church near her parents' home. By this time, I was deeply embedded in my debt-servicing exile, a specialist in remote data infrastructure, moving between temporary, isolated contracts in obscure global locations. I was making impossible money and chipping away at the crushing debt, but I was anonymous, faceless, and without a connection to my past. But I had to see it. I needed final confirmation that my sacrifice was complete, successful, and irreversible. I flew back under an assumed identity, shaved my head, and wore clothes that made me look like an unrecognizable shadow of my former self. I stood at the back of the church, concealed by the crowd and the architectural shadows. The church was filled with light, laughter, and the soft, perfect music of a string quartet. Clara walked down the aisle, radiant, magnificent, and entirely at peace. She wasn't just beautiful, she was the picture of a woman walking into the life she was meant to live. James was there waiting, stable, loving, and entirely deserving of her goodness. I watched as they exchanged rings and vows, their union sealing the perfect, stable future that I had to die to protect. When they kissed, the finality of it hit me, not with a bang, but with a quiet, devastating finality. I was a ghost in the memory of a past life. I smiled, a genuine, painful smile of absolute victory and absolute defeat, and then I melted back into the crowd, leaving my final, silent blessing to her new, perfect life. If you had the chance to attend the wedding of the woman you loved to another man, knowing your sacrifice bought her that happiness, would you go, or would you spare yourself the pain? I needed the proof. I needed the wound to stay open so I wouldn't forget the magnitude of my choice. It's been 5 years since the wedding. I'm 34 now. The debt is almost gone. The legal entanglement is nearly resolved, soon to be just a footnote in a decade-old commercial filing. I am financially free and free of my obligation. But I am utterly, profoundly alone. I live a comfortable life now, a beautiful apartment, complete financial security, the ability to travel anywhere, but it's an existence without purpose. The architect of a chaotic, passionate life is now the caretaker of a quiet, sterile order. I accomplished the impossible. I paid off the debt, saved my family's name, and, most importantly, saved Clara's future. I follow her life discreetly, through subtle connections and public career announcements. She and James are thriving. She is an international legal rock star, traveling, fighting injustice, and now, they have a child, a beautiful, smiling girl. She achieved everything we dreamed of, and she achieved it because I removed my unstable, compromising presence from her life. Her happiness is absolute, non-negotiable proof that my sacrifice was correct. I would make the same choice 1,000 times over, but the cost haunts me every day. The silence in my apartment is deafening. My hands, once meant for building a home with her, are now only capable of typing complex financial code. I am free of debt, but I am utterly tied to the memory of the future that should have been ours. I have no new relationships. Every woman I meet is a shadow compared to the light I extinguished. My loneliness is a physical presence, a permanent resident in my empty, well-funded life. I am a martyr to love, but I feel like a fool. I wonder sometimes if she ever, even for a second, looks back and wonders about the man she left behind. Does she pity him? Does she hate him? Or has the villain I created in her memory completely faded, replaced by the warmth of her actual, beautiful life? I achieved my goal, her happiness. But I lost everything that made my life worth living. Was her happiness worth my loneliness? Was my eternal silence the true price of love? I have the answer for her life, but I am still searching for the answer for my own. I let the woman I loved marry someone else, and now I'm left wondering if a monumental sacrifice like this is an act of true love, or just a permanent mistake that condemns the saver to eternal loneliness. If this story of ultimate sacrifice and professional regret resonated with you, please hit the like button, share this profound narrative, and subscribe to follow my haunted journey as I try to find a new purpose in the silence.